When we talk about walking in the footsteps of our ancestors, sometimes that can literally mean finding a town where your ancestors walked. So I am in beautiful downtown Payson, Utah, which is where my Simon's ancestors settled in the mid-1800s, lived for several generations. And in fact, if we look across the street, my great-great-grandfather, Orwell Simons, built this building. The Simons block, that's my Simons block. So you never know what you're going to find just by walking along the streets of where your ancestors walked. So we're going to explore a little bit here in Payson, see what we can find, and walk in the footsteps of our ancestors. Now, I never walked with my grandfather, who was born here in 1888, and obviously not with my great-grandfather, who was born in 1859, but I can sense that they would have been here. There was a confectionery along this street. I have no doubt that my grandfather went in there and bought candy. So let's see what else we can find in the town of Payson, Utah. Or maybe you can find in a town near you to discover and walk in the footsteps of our ancestors. Walking along these streets, just down from Main Street, walking along these streets, you can see a lot of the history that's here. You can see this church, which could have been a church that they attended. It's now a different denomination, but it very well could have been a church that they attended. And you look at the houses here. This house actually was built and lived in by both my great-great-grandfather and my great-grandfather. So I'm pretty sure my grandfather lived here when he was little. I look at these trees that are here. Were they little? Did my grandfather climb these trees? It's fascinating to think that right here in this neighborhood, I could be walking exactly where my grandfather and my ancestors walked. This is the Peyton Eats School in Payson that opened in 1901 for grades kindergarten through 6th grade. But my grandfather turned 13 the year it was open, so I don't think he ever attended school here. But definitely his younger sisters, my great aunts Martha and Sue, that I knew very well, probably attended here. So it's kind of cool to be able to walk on these grounds knowing that I have relatives that would have attended school here. Our last stop in the city of Payson is not someplace that my grandfather lived or worshiped in, not even where he's buried, though I am at the Payson City Cemetery, but it is where his grandparents, the same great-grandfather of mine that built the Simons block, is buried. Orwell Simons and his wife, Martha Dixon. They are buried here. So why am I walking in the footsteps here? Because my great-grandparents and my grandfather would have walked on these grounds to come to their funerals in 1900 and 1916. And I got to thinking how I wish I would have been able to have walked to these places with my grandfather when he was still alive. He died when I was 10, so I never had that opportunity. But then I got to thinking, why can't we walk with our children and our grandchildren, giving them the opportunity to walk in their ancestors' footsteps, in our footsteps? And along the way, we can tell them stories about things. Why do they need to wait until we're dead and gone, like I'm trying to do now, wondering, did he buy candy at this place? Did he climb this tree? We can share those stories now. So let's walk in the footsteps of our ancestors, but let's also help our descendants walk in the footsteps of their ancestors by taking them along and showing them parts of our life and telling our stories while we're still here. So walk in the footsteps of your ancestors as a descendant, but also as one who can share those stories with your posterity. Ciao.